Hi everyone, welcome to Aussizz Conclave 4.0. We hope that you're excited to know all about social work and community occupations and their courses and PR pathways. Now, let's get ready to meet the experts who are going to guide you through today's session. Detail-oriented Shailu Maharjan brings over 4 years of experience as an education consultant in Parramatta. Vivian Yu, a registered migration agent, specializes in employer-sponsored visa, family visa, and skill migration. As a dedicated migration agent, Arth Patel specializes in assisting clients in securing various types of visas tailored to their unique profile. And Hardik Patel wears two hats at Aussizz Group. He is a registered migration agent as well as the director of the Parramatta branch. Now I'll pass it over to our consultants.
Hello and welcome everyone on Migration and Education Conclave 2024. My name is Shailu Maharjan, and as an education consultant, today I'll be discussing on the educational pathway to become a social worker and a community worker. As an education consultant, I've come across multiple times that students are confused. What is social work and what's community service? The difference between social worker and a community worker. So before I start the presentation here, I'd like to discuss what is social work. So social work is a profession where professional field dedicated would help the individual, families, and communities enhancing their well-being and cope with challenges in their life. So with social worker, the key focus area would be counseling, case management, crisis intervention, and advocacy. So here, as a social worker, you can work as a counselor, provide emotional and psychological supports, manage the cases of an individuals, and helping individuals in an emergency situations. As an advocacy, you can also support with clients' rights and needs. So often social workers seems to be employed by non-profit organizations, local governments, and organizations. So after knowing social work, then what is community worker then? Right? So community worker is a professional dedicated to improve the well-being of a community as a whole, not just with an individual, but they deal with whole community, addressing local issues, empowering the residents, and facilitating across to resources and services. Here, looking at the key focus area of community worker, it seems similar to what we discussed earlier on a social worker piece. So, as a community worker, you can also work as an advocacy, but as a whole, you will be representing the community interest, not just an individual. So as a community worker, your key focus area would be education, advocacy, program development, community outreach. And here we can see most of the time, community workers are often employed by healthcare facilities, schools, school service agencies, and many more like hospitals and etc. So to become a social worker or community worker here in Australia, there are several degrees available that you can study and way enhance to your career development. So the degrees in community service available in Australia is Diploma of Community Services and Bachelor's of Community Services. So Diploma of Community Service is a 2 years degree provided by multiple colleges available here in Australia, and Bachelor's of Community Service is 3 years degree. However, in community service, there is no such specific degree as Masters of Community Service, but very few universities are having that options as well. Now, moving forward towards degrees in social work. So in degrees to social work, you can either study Bachelor's of Social Work or Masters of Social Work to become a social worker. So Bachelor's of Social Work is a 4 years degree, whereas Masters of Social Work is 2 years degree. So those students who have completed their year 12 in back their home country can directly get admissions to Bachelor's of Social Work But however, to study Masters of Social Work, you need to have a cognitive bachelor's degree or a social science cognitive subjects. If the students is not having those backgrounds, then there is nothing to worry about, because multiple universities and colleges in Australia are having a pathway programs to get entry into those Masters of Social Work program. So they are not as graduate certificate in human services or graduate diploma. However, many universities and colleges have their own name in towards to the pathway programs. It depends upon college to college and universities to universities. So what does that mean? Graduate certificate and graduate diploma. So these are the programs where you can get admissions without having a social science background. So it's a 6 months to 1 year degree program where you can have a cognate subject background and enhance your skills to go to master's degree. So these programs would definitely help you to reach out to masters in social work. Moving towards our next slide, we have entry requirements to get admission in these programs. So I've mentioned both the degrees, community services, along with social works. So undergraduate and postgraduate program, as you can see on my screen. So academic requirement for this program, Bachelor's of Social Work or Community Service, is to have a completion of Australian Year 12 or a equivalent from our home country, and have English and humanities subjects on their Year 12 subjects. Whereas for postgraduate programs, Masters of Social Work, you can have a complete bachelor's degree in any field, but as mentioned earlier, preferable social science backgrounds. If you don't have, then definitely we do have pathway options to go into these programs. So talking about the entry requirements, English proficiency requirement of these programs to study Bachelor's of Social Work or Community Services, the minimum English requirement is 6.5, no band less than 6 in each for both the degrees, social work and community worker. TOEFL requirement is around 79 to 93, and other tests like PT academic also can be accepted with the equivalent point of 65, no band less than 6, that would be around 56 points. However, for Masters of Social Work, the English requirement is a little bit higher than what it's required for a bachelor's degree. That would be around 7, no band less than 7 in each to get direct admission to study Masters of Social Work program. Similarly, in TOEFL, 94, no less than 94 to 110, and for PT, equivalent to 7, no band less than 7. So, as mentioned for masters, definitely 7, no band less than 7 is the must that you have. But however, if you are not having 7, no band less than 7, and you are not meeting the social cognitive subjects, then you can get entry to pathway programs with 6.5, no band less than 6 as well. So let's talk about the career opportunities here in these degrees, both social worker and community workers. So you can work as a clinical social worker, school social worker, medical social worker, community organizer, substance abuse counselors, community development officer, community health workers. So how can you work in these industries as a social worker, right? So if we have to discuss about all these things, as mentioned earlier, you can work for an individual or a community itself. Both of them has the same work settings. Both of the organizations, both social worker and community workers can work on the same work settings like hospital and clinics, schools and universities, government agencies, non-profit organizations, private practices, community centers. Like, for example, if there might be a lot of cases where clients would require counseling. Like, for example, in school, if a student is facing a bullying or something like that, then definitely they can go to a school counselor and communicate with them to solve that issue. So as a social worker, you can work as a counselor, social school counselor, and advise that client accordingly. So these are the career opportunities and work settings for both the careers, social worker and community worker. So moving towards the intake fee structures and intake requirements for universities here in Australia. We do have multiple universities and colleges who are providing this program. Western Sydney is one of the best university here in Australia. NSW, ACAP is there, 𝐦𝐿𝐴 College is there, and Torrens University. These universities and colleges provide courses like community service, Bachelors of Community Service, Masters in Social Work. So they do have multiple intakes in a year. February and June, July is the main intake, but very few university and colleges are having September intake for these programs lately. However, the fee structure for these programs starts with $30,000 to around $35,000 annually, and they do have multiple scholarship options as well. But the scholarship depends upon university to university because it's up to university. They do have 50% of vice chancellor scholarship and other nationality scholarships as well. So you can reach us out to know more about scholarship and admission processes. And if you're planning to become a social worker and community worker, then please do reach us out at Aussizz Group and we can help you out to process further. So if you guys have any question, then feel free to reach us out on the comment section, and definitely we will be helping you out to solve those questions. We'll be moving towards migration aspects of the session, and I would like to ask Rudy to take forward.
Okay, now we will be moving forward towards the migration section, and the respective consultant will take over now. Arth, I would like you to start presenting now. Arth, you are on mute.
Hi, are you able to see my screen? Hi, so my name is Arth Patel. I'm a registered migration agent at Aussizz Group. So thank you very much for explaining about the education part for the social worker and community worker. It's a really good occupations, and it is in demand, to be honest, in Australia. So she has explained you about the education part, and after education, what's the next part? It's your migration part, and in the migration, the first part is the skill assessment, right? So here we will explain the skill assessment, the invitation processes, and the visa application and everything in terms of the whole migration process. We have divided the occupations state by state, and my colleagues will explain the different states. Moving forward. So overall, in the migration process, once you finish your studies, the first step is a skill assessment, and the skill assessment that gives you your field or your occupation, and depends on your occupation, you can participate in the federal program or in the state government program, from where you receive an invitation to apply for the 189, 190, and 491 visas. So to apply for these visas, basically you require an invitation. Now you'll have a questions, what is this 189, 190, and 491? So if federal government invites, then they invite for 189 visa. And if it's state government, then it's 190 and 491. That's the first difference among these three subclasses. And furthermore, if any visa that starts with number 1, that is permanent residency. And any visa that starts with number 4, that is temporary. You see here, this is 1, which is permanent. This is 4, this is temporary visa. All right. Similarly, after studying, after your student visa, you apply for the 485, which is temporary visa. This is just to give you the overview. about the migration process. Now, how the invitation process works, how federal government invites the applicant, and how the state government invites uh, uh, the applicants. So, if your occupation is available in the federal program, then the federal government uh, there will be an invitation round, and each invitation round they will first select the field, and then after they will select the they will check the points. So if your occupation is selected, then the point will matter. Okay. For example, if you have 100, 110, or 105 points for accountant, but if your field is not selected in the invitation round, then there is no meaning of points. So here in 189, the important part is field as well as points. All right. And in the state government, where we have different states, so there will be a different requirements, and for different in terms of let's say we have 5 or 6 different states, so each state has its own requirements, but majorly all the states they are looking for points, English, residence, and employment in that states. Now if you are if you can only be invited by the state if you have residence in that state, if you have employment in that state, in your field, right? So each state has their different requirements, which we will cover in the next slides. So first thing is, let's say social worker. You study, as she explained here, there are many options available here in Australia to study in social worker field. Now, the first thing after you study is your skill assessment. For the skill assessment process, for social worker, I mean, to get a skill assessment in social worker field, you need education in social worker field, which is at least at bachelor's level, English 7 each in IELTS academic. This is very important thing, that you only can need to get 7 each in IELTS academic. All right, PTE or other tests are not acceptable here, and this is the really key point for the skill assessment. And work placement 1000 hours. You should also focus on your work placements, because it is very important uh, to complete the your course as well as to get a job later on, because work placements where you learn most of the things, and usually the number of hours are 1000 hours, right? So key thing for skill assessment is education in social worker field, English 7 each in IELTS academic only, not general, IELTS academic, and work placement 1000 hours. If you have these 3 things, you will get your skill assessment in a social worker field. Now, once you have a skill assessment in social worker field, this occupation is available in the federal as well as in the state government programs, right? So you can participate in both the programs. And as I mentioned earlier, for the federal government, it depends on the invitation round, and each invitation round, they will select the field first, and then they will look for the points and all, right? So uh, uh, in the last, if you see the most of the invitation rounds for the federal government, um, in each invitation round they have invited social workers, all right, and many of the times they've invited social workers at 65 points as well. So in terms of getting federal invitation for 189 invitation, there's a high chance for the social worker, and therefore this occupation is truly in demand because it's invited by the federal government in their each invitation round. And compared, if we talk about the state government, then I will cover these 3 states now: South Australia, Tasmania, and Queensland, where, as I've also explained earlier, that each state has their own requirements, and time to time they change the requirements, but their main focus will be whether you are living there or not, whether you are working in the state or not. So all these 3 states, South Australia, Tasmania, and Queensland, what they need is whether you're living in the state, or and do you have a job in your field or not. So depends on that one. They are inviting all the applicants for the 190 and 491 subclasses. And furthermore, there are high chances of getting invitation for social workers in all the 3 states, because again, this occupation is in demand, and by 2025 it will be in more demand. So if you are planning to study in Masters of Social Work or Bachelors of Social Work, it's a really good idea. But the key thing here is English 7H. While you are studying, you should focus on your English 7H, because most of the people, they do not focus on this part, which they avoid this part, and basically they procrastinate this part, they will do later on. But then after, they do not clear the 7 each in IELTS academic, and they ended up with getting skill assessment as a community worker, because when you study social worker, it is accredited for the community worker as well. So here you can get skill assessment as a community worker as well if you have studied masters in social work. And there are further more options available for as well if you study in social worker, as in social worker field. For example, diversional therapist, that which is a wellness and lifestyle coordinator. These are the fields which you can get your skill assessment if you study in social worker field. Now, going to the next slide. As I've explained, that social worker is available in the federal and state government, both the programs. But the federal is the same, right? I mean, it's from the federal government, so there is no changes. But for the state government level, for especially in Western Australia and Victoria, uh, my colleague Vivian, she will give more highlights on these two states about social worker occupation.
Hello. Hi. Hi, I'm Vivian. I'm a registered migration agent in Aussizz Group. So I will talk a bit more about the social work environment in WA in Victoria. So in WA, there are 4 priority industries that are getting higher invite for this financial year, but I will be expecting the similar invite for next financial year. So social worker and community worker, it's on the priority list. It's on the graduate stream. It's also on the general stream. And if you have, as Arth has talked about, if you have completed the accredited course along with 7 each in hours, you will get the skill assessment, and it's on 189 list, on 190 and 491 list. And in WA, if you are so the requirement for WA for this financial year is if they're giving priority for people who are living in WA, and also for this critical sector, and it's very in demand, and with lower points it will be easy, you could get invited. And so for Victoria, it's very similar selection criteria as well, but Victoria has its ROI system. So basically they will assess your age, English, experience in your nominated occupation, education background, if you have partner. And there's one more selection criteria in Victoria. There's about how much salary you are earning on your occupation. Social worker and community worker are also on the priority list in Victoria. In this financial year, I will be expecting the similar priority list in Victoria next financial year.
All right, thank you very much, Vivian, for explaining for the Western Australia and Victoria. As I've explained as well, these occupations, social worker, and you also covered community worker, by the way. Thank you much. Thank you very much for that one as well. That is in demand. It's in demand. If it's in demand, then it will be invited by the government, because they need those people, right? Now, Hardik will share his idea and about the social worker occupation for the NSW and ACT. I mean, he can let us know the requirements, the basic requirements, the highlights, and the chances of getting invited in the NSW and ACT states.
Thank you very much, Arth. Now, Hi viewers, so I'll be discussing about the NSW and ACT state nomination requirements. Now for social worker occupation, which is in medium and long term, short term, and the regional occupation list, there are very good chance for NSW state and the ACT as well. To be eligible to apply for NSW 190 nomination, since last 1 year, basically in this financial year, the requirement is that you must be residing in NSW. If you're onshore applicant, you must be residing in NSW for minimum last 6 months. And NSW is giving priority to the occupation which are relevant to health, education, ICT, infrastructure, agriculture. Now, let's say, for example, if you have been living here for 6 months, if you have a skills assessment, and if you have lodged an EOI for NSW 190 nomination, you have to wait for the invitation round. Every month, NSW conducts the invitation round where they rank people based on your points, your English, and an experience. We have seen invitations for NSW for social worker around 65 to 75 points, even with the experience and without experience as well. That means that this occupation is highly demanding for 190 in NSW. For people who are residing offshore, who are outside Australia, technically. So if somebody is living in any other states, not eligible for NSW state, but if somebody is living outside Australia, they must be residing outside Australia since last 6 months. So if somebody is in Australia on 485 visa, or let's say on student visa, completed their requirements, if they have moved out to let's say different country, and if they want to still continue to try to get their 190 or let's say state nomination for 491 as well, they must be residing outside Australia for minimum 6 months, and then they can lodge an EOI. The invitations are based on ranking. So again, NSW state, when they conduct the round, they'll be inviting people based on your points, experience, and English. Now that's for the 190. Moving towards 491 NSW state. So again, there are two options, offshore and onshore. For the onshore candidate who are currently in Australia, the first requirement, there are two pathways, pathway 1 and pathway 2. The first requirement, you must be residing in NSW to be eligible to apply for any of these two pathways from last 6 months. Once you meet this requirement, pathway 1, most prominent, doesn't matter whether you have 65 points, 75 points, 85 points. Even if you have minimum 50 points by yourself, you are getting 15 points from the regional government. So you can make it 65, which is minimum criteria. Now, for the pathway 1, the requirement as of now is that you must have minimum 6 months experience in your field by living and working in regional NSW, and you must be earning at least 70,000 per annum. Or if you're working, let's say less hours, less than full-time hours, let's say less than 38 hours, then it has to be on pro rata basis. Similarly, there is another option. Let's say, for example, if you're residing in Sydney, and if you still want to continue with your 191, 491, both the option, we can try for both of them. For the pathway 2, the requirement is that you must apply for an EUI if you are residing since last 6 months in NSW, and then wait for the invitation round. Looking at the last 1 year of let's say data, it seems like NSW, they have not invited candidates under pathway 2. NSW state is having, they are currently open. They are having almost 150 seats, between 150 to 200 seats are left for this financial year. So we are hoping that they might conduct one round in this week. If they are, if not, then we'll have to wait for new updates for the upcoming financial year after July 2024. For the people who are residing offshore, to be eligible to apply for a 491 visa, again, they must be residing offshore since last 6 months, and then they can apply for an EUI. Invitations are based on ranking. So if they look at the NSW state, they look at your experience, they look at your points, and then based on that, they invite. Moving towards the other state, ACT. So if you want to be eligible to apply for an ACT, then there are different options for the ACT state government. So depends whether you are living onshore, offshore. Let's say, are you let's say working in ACT as an employee, or let's say you are having a small business in ACT, or let's say you are PhD graduate in ACT. So let's discuss about the 190 option first for ACT candidates. So let's say if you have been living in ACT, you must be living and working in ACT for minimum 26 weeks. Work has to be at least 30 hours per week. Once you meet this criteria, you can apply for an EOI, which is called matrix EOI. Now, ACT, they have their own point system, which is known as a matrix point system. So they award you with the points based on what you have done in ACT, like how long you've been living in ACT, whether you have studied in ACT or not, the English criteria. whether you have a partner, whether you have a skilled partner, whether your partner is having English or let's say professional English or not, superior English or not. So based on that, you can claim points in the ACT matrix point system. Invitations in ACT for social worker occupations, we have been seeing around 70 to 80 points. People have received invitation for 491, even let's say around 80 to 90 points for the 190 as well. That's one option. Same thing for the 491 as well. So let's say if you leave there for 26 weeks, let's say 6 months, you can try for 190. But if you want to try for 491 as well, then the requirement is that you must be living in ACT and working in any field at least minimum 13 weeks. Job can be part-time as well and must be working at least 15 hours per week. Once you meet that, you can apply for matrix COI and then wait for the invitation round. ACT, they conduct round every month, and if you receive the invitation, you can apply for your nomination with the ACT government. They will look at your points that you have claimed in the ACT matrix point system, and if you meet the requirement, they'll approve your nomination. You can apply for the visa. Now, apart from that, the other category is small business owner. Again, there are two options, 190-491 under small business owner category as well. So in ACT, for 190 visa, you must operate a business for minimum 6 months, and for 491, you must operate the business for minimum 3 months. You must be paying a salary to yourself. So to be eligible to apply for 190, you must pay 26,000 salary for yourself during the 26 months of period, which can be 13,000 for the 3 months to try for 491 option. You must have one employee working for you in your business who is Australian citizen or permanent resident. Once you meet this requirement, you can apply for a matrix EOI and a small business owner pathway. Wait for the invitation round every month. When they conduct the round, they invite people based on ranking. Very good chance if you are business aspirants and if you would like to open up a business or let's say buy a business in ACT, you can consider this option as well as a small business owner. Another thing, a good thing is that if you don't have capital, you can open a business in partnership as well. However, you must be 51% of the owner of the business to proceed with the small business owner category. Apart from that, people who complete a PhD research degree in ACT institutions based on ACT institutions. So let's say with the University of Canberra or let's say Australian National University, if you have completed PhD degree and if you have resided in ACT for minimum 12 months, you can apply for a matrix EOI. Now that's just an EOI. You don't get any points out of that as they don't invite you based on point system for the PhD graduate. So you lodge an EOI within 7 days of period, you'll get an invitation to apply for the visa, which is very good chance. So if you are currently doing your PhD in ACT, and let's say if this is one of your occupation like social worker, you have a very good chance to get the invitation under PhD pathway. Even somebody who has completed PhD with the institute based in ACT, however, they are residing in any other states, and if the PhD is completed within last 2 years of period, you have still very good chance you can apply while you are residing in any other state for the matrix EOI, and you can expect your invitation within 7 days of period through PhD pathway. So these are the requirements for a social worker. Moving towards the community services, I guess, Arth, can you please take it over?
Arth, you are on mute.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hardik, for explaining for the NSW and ACT requirements. That was really good. Now, after this slide, we'll go for the community worker. So first, what we have seen is social workers, the skill assessment requirements, then invitation requirements, and for everything for the social worker. Now we will see for the community worker. Now, if you have studied here, sorry, this one should be in the community worker also social science. So if you have studied bachelor's, diploma, or at least diploma or bachelor's in human services, and you have at least work placements 400 hours, then you can apply for the skill assessment for the community worker. Now, in some of the cases where the program is accredited and your work placements are not good, then in that case, you need 3 months of work experience, at least 30 hours per week for the skill assessment process. Now, let me explain you again. Here, most of the courses, when you start studying, that's accredited program, right? So for the accredited program, there is no work experience required, where you can get skill assessment with work placement only, right? However, some of the time ECWA does not accept that work placements, because they think that these work placements are not as per the quality or as per their standards or requirements. So in that case, they will ask you uh, to have 3 months of work experience at least in order to get a skill assessment. Now, in terms of English requirement in skill assessment, if you have studied bachelor's degree here in Australia, then you will be waived off. Then the English requirement will be exempted for you in that case. But if you studied here diploma, then you need at least 7 each in IELTS. Sorry, here it shouldn't be IELTS academic. It should be PTE or anything. Yeah, 7 each in IELTS or 65 in PTE. Everything is acceptable for the community worker ECWA skill assessment. All right. So these are the requirements for the community worker. And once you apply for the skill assessment with ECWA, you will get skill assessment as a community worker. Now here you will see there is no this part. It means this community worker occupation is in STSOL list. So you can only apply for 190 and 491. And you will be only invited by the state government in this case. There is no federal government here. All right. So you only have option which is 190 and 491. Now for these three states, just to give you an overview, it's the same as social worker. All right. The first thing in terms of field or occupation, this is again in demand. What I have seen is I've launched community workers visa application. All right. And it just got approved in 1 week or 2 weeks. It just clearly shows that community worker is the same as social worker and registered nurse and all other occupations, which is in demand, right? So in terms of getting invitation as well, in these three states, community worker, there is good chances of getting invitation. All right. Points, I don't think so. Point will matter a lot. However, at least you should have 65 points. What is important in the state, for any state that will invite you, if you have a good footprints in that state, basically any state will invite you if you are living there. Basically, most of the states, they do not invite if you're living in other states or you're living offshore. But all states, they have their own plans, which we have to understand state by state. All right. And employment is a key thing for the state nomination for all these three states. So without employment, I don't think so you can get an invitation for the community worker. Now I will pass for the Western Australia and Victoria to Vivian.
Thanks, Arth. So I'll talk a bit about the community worker invited in WA and in Victoria. So very similar to social worker, community worker is also on the priority list in WA. And then for this financial year for WA, there are two streams. One is graduate stream, another one is general stream. So community worker is on both streams. So that means if you have finished your 2 years study in WA, you are eligible under graduate stream. However, if you are interstate applicant and you move to WA, you can also be considered as eligible under general stream. And so since it's on the priority list, since it's on the priority list, so the invitation points can be considered like if you're meeting 65 minimum points, you will have a good chance to get invited. And then for Victoria, it's similar to the social worker as well. So it's for Victoria, health sector and social service sector, it's on their priority list. And community worker will have a good chance to get invited in Victoria. And very similar selecting criteria. So the Victoria state will assess the age, English, experience of your nominated occupation, your education background, also a salary to determine if you can get invited. You can submit all the information by lodging an EOI and then submit ROI, which is another system in Victoria State invite. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Vivian. Now, Hardik will explain for the NSW and ACT. He will just give highlights about these community worker occupation chances of getting invitation from these two states. Yes, thanks, Hardik.
You are on mute, Hardik. Hardik, you're on mute.
Thank you. So as Mr. Arth mentioned, the community worker in pretty much all the states are pretty much similar. The requirements are same. Moving forwards to NSW state, the community worker occupation has the same criteria similar to social worker. You must be residing in NSW state from last 6 months. And if you're living in NSW, you can apply for an EOI. Invitations are since last 1 year based on the priority to the health occupation, education occupation, ICT, infrastructure, agriculture, and the invitations are based on points, experience, and English. For the 491, same two pathways. Now, compared to social worker, if you are studying a community worker, there are more likely chance that you can get a job in NSW easily, let's say in a regional area. So if you have minimum 6 months of experience while living and working in regional NSW, you don't have to worry about your points. Even if you have minimum 50 points on your own, you can get 15 points from the regional government and you can apply with the 65 points for the 491 easily. For the offshore candidates, if you have relevant qualification and if you meet the skills assessment requirement, you can apply for a skill assessment. And then if you are living offshore since last 6 months, you can apply for NSW 190 and 491 nomination both. So we have to proceed with the EOI, and then we have to wait for the invitation round every month. When they have the invitation round, they since last 1 year, they are giving more priority to the people who are onshore. However, after July, it seems like they'll give the priority to the people who are offshore as well. Now, when we discuss about the ACT, same criteria, occupation must be on the skilled occupation list. Then apply for a matrix EOI if you are living in ACT since last 6 months, which is 26 weeks. If you have been living and working there for last 30, let's say 30 hours per week, or 13 weeks, minimum 15 hours per week for the 491 nomination. Once you meet the requirement, you can apply for a matrix EOI and then try to get the 190, 491 under, let's say, a normal pathway by living and working there, or else again, same small business owner pathway that we discussed during the social worker occupation. PhD research graduate, very good chance. If you have completed PhD from ACT institutions, you can apply. If you're living there, you may expect your invitations within 7 days of period, even if you are living outside of the ACT. And if you have completed within last 2 years of period, you can expect your invitation within 7 days of period as well. So the criteria for social work and community services both are similar in NSW and ACT state government.
Thank you. Thanks, Hardik, for explaining for the NSW and ACT. So what I would say is, if you study these two courses, all right, if you are planning to study the social worker or this community worker or social science diploma or bachelor's, whatever, there is a good chance for you to get a migration outcome as well as career outcome as well, because they both are a truly good occupations. And it's really good. It's better than MBA and other programs. What I would personally want you to learn from this presentation is that you need an invitation, right? The federal government, it's all about field and points, and state government is all about residence and employment. Now you have to see, let's say you are in NSW, you have to see Hardik or someone in NSW to know more about the state government program, right? Federal government is it's a fixed program. State government, it keeps changing. It's a dynamic process, right? And looking at the upcoming financial year and the number of seats all the states will have, the residence and employment will make a huge difference in your eligibility.